Well, howdy ho there, folks. How are we doing today? Hopefully you're all doing absolutely peachy keen fantastic. I wanted to talk a little bit about something that's been on my brain mind for a few minutes here. Well, a little bit longer than a few minutes, but you know, that's beside the point. Recently, I have been thinking about how my Warhammer content and my spiritual content are kinda, sorta separate. Not exactly like I don't ever bring up spiritual topics in a Warhammer video, but like, more that when I do the Warhammer stuff, it's much more focused on the Warhammer aspect rather than the spiritual aspect. And I was thinking about which aspect was more important to me. And of course, I had to go with the spiritual aspect being more important to me. So I was thinking about like where this channel was going, what I wanted to do, if I wanted to change things, if I wanted to focus things, all this other stuff. And one of the things that really came up to me in my brain as a big man with a mallet, and his name was Jim, was the idea that I should probably find ways to integrate the spiritual videos and the Warhammer videos more, so that way I can produce more spiritual content, because that's the stuff that's actually important to me, not the Warhammer stuff. Although the Warhammer stuff is fun, don't get me wrong, but ultimately, if I had to choose one or the other, I would definitely go with... I only have 9 left though. But ultimately, if I had to choose one or the other, I would definitely go with the spiritual content over the Warhammer content. And, you know, I was thinking, hey, there's not really any inherent reason I can't combine them. I think I kind of kept them a little bit separate because in my head I was like, well, I don't know how many people who watch like the Warhammer content would also want to watch spiritual stuff. But then I decided, hey, whatever, man. I love incorporating God into everything. God is so cool. Haha, I stepped on you. Haha, I stepped on you. Oh, you shot my foot. That's rude. And, you know, I was thinking about how much I love Ma, and I'm always trying to get closer to Ma, and I figured, hey, I frequently talk about how I incorporate, you know, my, like, Warhammer painting and playing games into a larger spiritual context and stuff like that, which I do. So I was like, well, hey, I should just be able to do that without any issue. And I think I can. And, you know, it's kind of interesting because I think actually Warhammer is in a lot of ways a good spot to represent spirituality. Partially because Warhammer is this, like, on the surface kind of dark universe. It's also, you know, very silly. And I think that you can use that darkness and that silliness to your advantage to represent how God is within everything, even in the stuff that's kind of dark and weird, right? Like, even if there's demons, I would say that the demons exist as part of God. Now, of course, Warhammer is also one of those series where I think one of the biggest problems with it is that it's always trying to talk about, like, how everything's, like, dark and so hopeless and blah, blah, blah. And basically it gives me that feeling of, like, apathy, just because... like, it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. If everybody's a bad guy, then it doesn't really matter who wins, at least in 40k. In fantasy, it's not like that. And, like, one of the cool things about fantasy is that you can explore and worship lots of cool little gods, and you can have, like, an empire of diverse cultures, and, like, the empire itself is diverse, but you also have Bretonia, which has some diversity, and you have, like, all these different places where they definitely feel like solid realms, but they also have, like, unique individuals and things that, kind of represent them in their own unique ways. And I was thinking about that. And I think that it's actually a good place to represent spiritual ambition and things like that. I like the idea, for instance, of a dark elf who goes against her kind of like family traditions and things like that, and wants to free slaves and wants to be good, and, you know, wants to do the right thing and stuff like that. And that, hey, that's possible, and that redemption is possible. You know, forgiveness is possible. That just because someone makes a bad choice in the past does not mean that they get to be condemned by it for all time. And, you know, it made me think about Angulimala. See, Angulimala, if you don't know, basically Angulimala's, that name literally translates to, like, finger necklace. Because Mala, those are necklaces or beads, and then Anguli is fingies. But Angulimala, basically the story is that the Buddha was traveling near this village, and he wanted to go through these woods, and the local villagers told him, oh, don't go through those woods because there's a bandit in there who likes to cut off people's fingers and is like a bad guy and blah blah blah. And the Buddha's like, uh-huh. And then he goes into the woods, and then they're like, oh no, not the Buddha, we'll never see that mendicant again. But then he goes out into the woods, and of course he runs into Angulimala. And Angulimala, you know, he sees the Buddha, he's like, hey, I can see somebody that I can rob and do bad stuff to. So he starts chasing after him. And in the legendary story, or the story that we hear, basically no matter how much Angulimala was chasing the Buddha, he couldn't actually catch up to the Buddha, right? Like, he was always chasing after him, he's like, aha, I'm gonna get you, but then he just couldn't get him. And after chasing the Buddha for what felt like a really long time and not being able to make any ground on him, eventually the Buddha talked to him and talked to Angulimala about the Dharma and how that he could find actual peace and that he didn't need to do this sort of stuff. And Angulimala, after hearing all this, decided to give up his life as a bandit and embrace the Dharma. Now, he ends up, you know, abandoning his former criminal ways and, you know, trying to earn redemption. So he goes through all these things, and even though he has a hard time with some of it, he ends up, you know, becoming a monk. But eventually the Buddha sends him to be a monk in the village that he used to terrorize. And, you know, Angulimala is scared about this because he's like, well, you know, I used to terrorize these people. I don't know if they're going to be able to, you know, look past what I've done in the past and truly move on. But, you know, the Buddha, being ultra duper wise as he is, manages to get... Is that gonna blow? I did, but it didn't take out the barrel like I thought it was going to. You know, it tells him to go there, and there's like special sutras and stuff that you can that you're supposed to be able to recite to. I'm just gonna. There you go. That you're supposed to be able to recite to help with births and things like that. So he does this for a while. There's some very difficult births that he helps with, but he ultimately ends up becoming accepted by the community as a true mendicant because he was willing to do all this stuff to prove that he was willing, that he had truly changed, and that he was always, you know, going to go for it, and that he really believed in the Dharma and that he was really adhering to the Dharma. And, you know, despite his vicious past, the people ended up accepting him, and he ended up becoming a beloved mendicant in the area. And I think that that story is important because, hey, it shows that even people who have done horrible things in the past, there can be forgiveness in their hearts. And there can be the forgiveness of the Dharma within them, or, you know, the forgiveness of God, whatever you would choose. And I think that that's really important. And I sometimes think about Warhammer as a setting, and I think that Warhammer is basically a setting full of Angulimalas, right? There's lots of people who do bad, terrible things to other people that they shouldn't be doing. But with the thanks and forgiveness of God, you can get past all that stuff. And even if you're one of the most horrible dark elves, you can turn around, I think. Now, some might say that's naive, or, you know, not really the point of Warhammer, that they like the darkness. It's like, hey, man, if you're really into the darkness, you can enjoy the darkness. It's whatever, man. Just not really my thing. I prefer to have the idea of people redeeming themselves and coming around to the other side. Not just the idea that everything is dark and bad and blah, 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 bad, bad, and then more bad, and then still bad. It just gets so tiresome to me. And part of this, of course, is simply a matter of, you know, like, all this stuff keeps going on and on and on, and at least, especially in 40k, it starts to get to this feeling of like everything's inevitable and it doesn't matter what you do and who cares. And that's just kind of not like that interesting of a setting by itself. But taking that setting and subverting it and going for like the positive messages and the messages of, you know, the love of God, the love of Christ, the love of Kali, whatever you're going for there, I think that's much more interesting. And that you can get stories that, oh, I think I'm out of ammo for that. I might not have ammo for. You're not out of ammo for that. And that you can always, you know, find ways to redeem characters and do more interesting things with them. I also have to admit, and this is not really from the spiritual point of view, this is just from a writing point of view, I think everyone being Belland and everyone doing the wrong things all the time is just kind of not really that interesting. It, like, from a story perspective, if everyone's just bad all the time, it's like, that's just kind of boring and lame. And especially because, like, at a certain point with a lot of them, they don't even seem like they're doing it for any real motivation. They're just doing it to do it, and it's like sometimes with the Chaos, I think Chaos is actually handled a lot better in 40k than it is in Fantasy, in the sense that I understand it in 40k a bit more, and like with the setting, I think a lot of it makes more sense for like, okay, why would somebody turn to Chaos? Well, someone's gonna turn to Chaos because, you know, there's all kinds of bad stuff going on, and, you know, the Imperium is in shambles, and there's all this darkness and things like that. But, like, in Fantasy, it feels more like I don't really quite as much understand why people so readily go to, like, the Chaos Gods for, like, power and stuff like that. Like, I mean, I get it. Humans really do seem to love power, and they love running around being like, ah, yes, I have the most power, who has ever powered power. But honestly, it's just not as interesting as, like, people who are willing to change and grow and have, like, actual motivations and things like that. And, you know, have human weaknesses and things, and aren't just like, I'm a big man who picked up a demon sword. Now I get to be the ultimate boy. It's like, okay, thanks, I guess. Thanks for your inability to be interesting, and now your ability to just be angry Bellend in space. Thank you for that ability. I would prefer it if you did other things, though. But, you know, that's kind of one of the things about Warhammer, especially Warhammer Fantasy, though, is that there's still, like, noble ideals in all this, and that you can kind of have some of them kind of get carried out, and it doesn't just have to be just darkness all the time. Part of the reason I think, at least as like a setting to tell stories in, I think Age of Sigmar is probably more interesting to me than 40k. But as setting lore, I think I would still give it to 40k. I just think the 40k is kind of interesting. I like walked into that shotgun blast. I shouldn't have done that. And things like that. Now, of course, I think one of the problems is that I think Space Marines are cool, but like they're inherently working for such like a bad state, and it's like all these things that it makes it a lot harder to like them. But you can make your own nice Space Marine chapter, right? You can do all kinds of crazy things. And I think that we don't necessarily give 40k enough credit as a setting where you can kind of go around and do what you really please. A lot of people seem to like, they're like, no, this is the lore, as in, this is the way things have to be. And it's like, well, that's like, no. I think that it's much more interesting to use that as something that you can use to subvert the baseline story, and instead replace it with more interesting things. Like if you're in a setting where a lot of people are bad, to have good people in it who strive against the bad, I think that's a bit more interesting. But of course, that's just me. So I was thinking about all this. I was thinking about how what I really want is to do more spiritual videos, but I also like doing the Warhammer videos, so then I was just like, yeah, well, I should just combine them more than I am currently. I think that, no, there were people still alive over here. Eh. No, that still worked, haha! And that, like, you know, this setting where there's nothing but war could also kind of be an interesting allegory for, like, the idea of, like, spiritual warfare and, like, standing up against, like, the darkness and things like that. Ooh, that sent me back further than I thought it would. But I don't know, maybe that might be pushing it a little, but I think these are all still interesting ideas. But yes, I personally want to do more spiritual stuff. I want to do more cool stuff in space and cool stuff in Warhammer Fantasy, and do these things and have them, you know, generate interesting new plot lines and developments and things like that. And, you know, be able to talk about more spiritual context. Maybe I can make it so that during the week, I can have, like, topics that I really focus on, and, like, have multiple videos addressing, like, the same topic, and kind of getting, like, more in-depth, or, like, talking about a different part of each one. Or, you know, I can do diversified topics, you know, whatever I end up doing. I don't... Will this... I killed one of them. Wait a bit. Hey, I know there's a creature up there still. Oh, okay, this works. Daka? Daka? Good enough. And then we can... Hi. Then we can kind of like work around these things and work them in together, and I think that it will also allow us to produce more spiritual stuff, but also, you know, maybe we can kind of concentrate the topics a little bit more, and I think that could be good. I am also kind of the opinion that it's going to be good to make maybe slightly less videos. I feel like putting out 8 videos a week is maybe getting to the point of being a little bit too much. I end up spending pretty much all my off time working on videos, but then it's like, unfortunately, because of the way they are, I'm not really like improving the quality a ton. I think I'm trying, and I'm definitely getting decent videos out. But you know, I think if we do less videos, maybe I can focus on putting less out, but doing what you call it. But doing maybe like different quality videos and like trying to really sort of increase the quality of what I'm doing, but also maybe try out different things, maybe try to do... I think I'm kind of aiming for like maybe more like 5 videos every week that I produce, which I don't know, it's probably still a lot, but I think because a lot of these are basically just me talking, and you know, I don't have to do that much research for a lot of them, because you know, a lot of it, at least when we're talking about spiritual topics, it's stuff I already know and stuff that, you know, maybe I need like a reference for here and there, but is largely there we go. But you know, it's largely stuff, like I said, that I already know, so I don't necessarily have to run around and try to get all these different things going, and you know, like a little bit of research, because I do take notes and things like that. But I try not... I don't really do scripts, because what I tend to do... I tend to find that if I'm reading directly off a script, I think it just sounds worse. That could be like in my head, but to me, it always comes across as a little bit more robotic when I hear a recording. And I think I am decent at reading out loud, and I can read real fast, but that's actually part of the reason why, like, if I read out loud, the thing that tends to happen is that my eyes will read faster than my mouth speaks. So then, like, I get this thing where, like, I'm kind of getting exactly what it says, but I also have to sometimes have to, like, do 2 takes or something like that. And I have to, like, slow down a little bit. Thankfully, my reading comprehension is pretty good, so that helps. But yeah. Anyway, I just kind of wanted to tell you guys this is what I've been thinking about. What I'm thinking about going forward is, like, you know, doing slightly less videos, doing more spiritual videos, taking the Warhammer videos and adding spiritual elements to them and talk about spiritual stuff. Maybe still talk about Warhammer a little bit, you know, but you know, I want to focus more on the spiritual stuff. And yeah, probably now that this Half-Life is going to be finished here in a little bit, and Lunacid is going to be finished, so that's like, and we're not really doing Sunday videos anymore, so that already, if I just don't do those 3 videos and don't find a way to continue those, I can kind of expand outward. Or what I can do is I can have my, like, because I want to do, like, probably Warhammer video, at least 1, maybe 2 Warhammer videos, 2 spiritual videos like I normally do, and then, like, the cat sermon like I normally do. And if I do all those things together, that's like 5 videos. And I think if I work that out right, I can kind of do it to where I have more time on my weekends to work on longer form videos. I have a bunch of different ideas for, like, Gary's Mod videos, or like, because you know, those are always fun, like messing around making like little movies in Gary's Mod, but those take more time. That takes more editing and more setting up and doing things like that. And it's not necessarily always like a crazy amount of time, but they do definitely take more time. But yeah, so that's kind of my idea right now and my idea for going forward, and I just wanted to share those with you. And you know, I hope you guys are understanding and get like where I'm coming from and all that stuff. And hey, you know, if some folks are like, hey man, I don't really want to watch the Warhammer stuff with spirituality. It's like, hey, you know, I get it, and I'm just glad I have the audience I have, and I'm glad that people enjoy my content, and that I can make a few people's lives a little bit brighter. I don't need a ton of people watching, and that's not to say, hey, go away or anything like that, but it's like, hey, I understand that not everybody likes the same sort of things. Anyway, thanks so much for stopping by, and I hope that you know that I love you and God loves you, and bye-bye, I love you, bye, have an absolutely great one.